Hey everyone, so today I'm here to talk about honesty. And the reason I talk about honesty is because I didn't even realize it because I was in denial, but for a long time I struggled with being honest, like not only with my family and my loved ones and just people around me, but I struggled to be honest with myself a lot of times. And whenever people have a hard time with honesty, it makes it really hard to do anything in life. It just makes life so much more difficult in so many different ways. Because, you know, let's start off like, why do you lie? Why do people lie? It's usually to, avoid consequences or feeling bad about something, or like, the possibility of feeling guilty, or is to protect something that we're like interested in and that we want to do, even though it might be at the expense of somebody else, or it might be to protect our image and like how we view ourselves, or we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, but we also can lie to protect people from harm as well. Like, if your wife asks you if she looks good in, this dress, and you know that she doesn't really, and you say that, it might really hurt her feelings. So, I mean, if there was a time, I guess, that it could be justified to lie, it would be, I suppose, in times where somebody else could be harmed if you didn't. But even in those situations, I still kind of think that honesty might be the better route, because then you could look at it like, well, if she's upset about that, like why is she upset about it? So like then that just brings another issue to light. Like if she's upset about you telling the truth, why is that? So then that's something you guys can work on together. But as I mentioned, I had for a really long time, I had a really big problem with honesty. And it was to the point where I remember one time I kind of just like looked around and I had no idea what was real and what wasn't anymore, because lived my entire life in a lie. I was lying to everybody around me where I was all the time. I was lying about what I was doing, who I was hanging out with, you know, pretty much everything in the world that you could lie about, I was lying about. And it's no coincidence that during that time period, I I don't even know if I would say, like, as far as personal growth goes, I was stagnant. I think I was regressing, honestly, because it was just such a toxic way to live, by ignoring all these like red flags and things around me, but lying to avoid them. That's just like a recipe to fail at living. At least that's how I felt about it. So, like, one of the most profound moments I've had in my journey to, having like a healthy mind and liking myself, was the first time I checked myself into an inpatient rehab center. And on the way, actually, it was on the drive there, it was like, a couple hour drive. I had this, like, I was like, how did this happen? Like, how did I end up relapsing after how many months I had? And I realized that it was because I wasn't honest, one, like with myself, but two, I wasn't honest with my support network around me. Like I was like craving drugs, and I wasn't doing very well as far as mental health goes. But instead of telling people, I just hid it. And I did that because, one, I didn't want anybody to think that I was, working a bad recovery program. So, that's protecting my self image. Two, I didn't want to have anybody telling me that I needed to do all this other stuff to fix it. So, it's like I mentioned, I didn't want to expend any resources or energy to do that. But three, honestly, maybe honestly enough, I didn't want to worry people. And so like I mean, there are some, like, I dug up those first two reasons why I think I wasn't honest with myself, but those didn't show themselves to me right away, but I was aware that I kind of was just trying to shoulder this whole thing on my own, instead of worrying about, or instead of having other people worry about me. Like I would rather have at that time taken on all of this stress, instead of have somebody else, lose sleep at night wondering if I'm going to be okay. But by doing so, I, didn't bring the problems to light, and the problem got ignored, and it ended up manifesting and becoming powerful, and it led me to go back out and relapse. And, I had a really relevant time. This was like not even a week ago, maybe two, that I had to be really honest with myself. Was, I was in a situation with somebody, you know, somewhat recently, and we had kind of a falling out or whatever, and I thought to myself, like, there's no way that I had any part in this really, or at least my part was pretty minimal, and I wasn't the bad guy, like I was almost like a victim, I guess. And one of my friends pretty much like called me out on it and was like, "Well, you kind of communicated like garbage during this whole time." And I like immediately was like, "You're ridiculously insane right now. Like, don't you know who I am? Like, I'm Mike Davis. Communication is what I thrive at. I'm awesome at communicating." And then I sat down and I really thought about it, and all these light bulbs went off, and I realized once I got honest with myself and really looked at the situation that she was right. And I did communicate like garbage in this example, and it sucked, to have that realization that I had a way bigger part in the way that this thing unfolded than I originally thought. That's a tough pill to swallow. But the good part of it is that now I'm not up on my high horse anymore, which I probably needed, and I know that my communication skills need work. So, by being honest with myself, I allowed myself the opportunity to see the problem and work on the root of it instead of just let it manifest and ignore it and be in denial about it and let it fester and then eventually explode into something really terrible. So I'm grateful that I adopted this skill because there's not many people that you would consider like, had integrity or were successful or, just like the loose phrase like a good person. Like even like for example like Abraham Lincoln, people consider him one of the best Americans to ever live. And he was literally nicknamed Honest Abe. And I kind of I not kind of I do subscribe to that idea that living an honest life makes everything so much easier, and it increases happiness, and it allows you to, it might be uncomfortable for a little bit sometimes if you are honest with yourself and honest with people around you, but it's only temporary usually. And in the long term, if you work on that, then that problem that you were originally dealing with and that you wanted to lie about but you didn't, like you can fix that. And so in the long term, it actually ends up being okay, and you come out a better person because you were honest about it. You were able to work on it because you brought it to the surface, and now you have that experience and that knowledge, you know, under your belt. So you grew as a person because of that. Um, and I don't know. I just think that it's kind of like a cool honor. Like if somebody's describing you and they say like you're a straight shooter or you tell it how it is, I think that's really admirable in somebody because it's not easy to do that. It's really easy to lie and kind of mold your own self-image in a way or how you want people to perceive you. But then you're stuck with like living in what you really are, and then you have like this fabricated reality that you've created through lies and being dishonest, and eventually I guarantee you for sure it comes crashing down on you, and there's no way you can do anything but be honest with yourself. And then instead of having like a few little things like over the span of like a year or two, whatever it may be, over any period of time, like you can deal with them accordingly, you have like 50 things that you're realizing all at once, and it just comes down on you like a tidal wave, and like that's pretty overwhelming to deal with. And I've definitely been there where I just have had my web of lies just absolutely obliterate me into the earth. So, it's interesting actually because there's a study I just read about recently where they told one group of people to stop lying and another group of people to just go about their lives however they want. And the group of people that actively were trying not to lie anymore actually reported being happier. They had better, communication at home. They reported being happier in their relationships, and even really interestingly, their physical health actually increased too. So like they reported having like less migraines, less anxiety, less sore throats, even like things like that. So the benefits from being honest are pretty pretty outstanding and pretty widespread. You can probably list about 1,000 of them, but you know I guess for like me, my biggest thing with it is, and like the biggest pro to it for me, is that it allows you to identify character defects or identify why, something's happening, but like you're able to deal with it head on by being honest with it. And that's the most effective way to deal with problems. And that's the quickest way. It's the most uncomfortable way for I will say that, but you're uncomfortable for a little bit so you can be comfortable for a long time after that. So today I challenge you to look at a situation and see your part in it. And if you're dealing with consequences of something right now, or if you like catch yourself about to lie to somebody in your life, just ask yourself why. Like, what are you hiding from? And what are you so worried about bringing up to that person? And why are you worried about it? So, there's some heavy questions to ask, but I promise you that if you do ask yourselves those questions, that you'll come out on the other side like a far better person than you were whenever you were about to lie. So, thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate it as always.